Good day. Today I'd like to talk about something that always surprises me in partnership mediation, particularly negotiations around a buyout. There's always this big surprise. It happens every time, happens to everybody that participates. There's this huge shock, and we always have to deal with it in the first meeting, sometimes a couple of meetings. Even when I counsel people that it's coming, they're still surprised. So today I want to tell you what the big surprise is and why you should have seen it coming. So let's take a little sample case here. We've got a business that's about a year and a half old. That's pretty typical for these tense buyout scenarios. The business is just getting its feet off the ground, and then problems start and somebody wants to go. So we've got a business about a year and a half old. They're two partners. They're 50-50 partners. One put up the money, put $90,000 in the business. Not a huge business, but $90,000, a lot of money to put up in cash. And partner number two worked without salary for 18 months. And as a side note, partner number two has a full-time job somewhere else. That also is pretty common. Somebody will put up the money, somebody else does work. And the one doing the work's got to eat, knowing that the business isn't going to produce. They typically will keep their job until the business is ready to support them. So nothing really unusual there. This is a very common scenario that I see multiple times a week. I'm dealing with a few cases right now that are exactly this makeup. To date, a year and a half, the business has around $50,000 in sales, hasn't made profit yet, and it's operating at a loss. Nobody's taken any distributions. Then a dispute breaks out. Partners disagree, typically over their vision for the company. Somebody says, "Oh, we're not growing fast enough. I don't like the way you do things. You offended a customer. You didn't do that right. Why didn't we get that big deal you said we were going to get?" There's always some issue in there over the vision of the company or how things are being managed. Trouble breaks out. There's no partnership agreement. Very few businesses I deal with have partnership agreements, probably because the ones that do stay out of trouble and stay out of mediation. The operating agreement is weak. By weak, I mean it doesn't really give the rules around operation. It only specifies initial contribution, ownership percentages, purpose of the business, the usual boilerplate stuff that anybody can download. So we have a dispute. Partner number two, the sweat equity guy, he wants to leave. He insists on being bought out, and he wants his full value, which of course he should want. Partner number one, the one who put the cash in, wants to keep the business. He's going to keep it for himself. So if he buys out partner number two, then he'll keep the business for himself and continue operations, just hire somebody to do the work. The partners can't agree on a fair price for the buyout, and so I get the call. So here's what happens. Partner number two, the seller, the guy that did the work, the sweat equity, makes this case. When I say, "What do you want for your interest?" this is the case he makes. He says, I want, for my 50%, I work 2,200 hours at $150 an hour. That's worth $330,000. But I'm going to discount my time to $300,000. And I want $175,000 for my 50% of the business. So I'm asking for a total of $475,000. And I know the business isn't making money right now, but 5 to 10 years out, this business can be worth millions of dollars. I mean, that's our model. That's what we projected. We're on target to do that. Now, by on target, it means they were making zero. Now they have $50,000 in total revenue for a year and a half. So that's what he's calling on target. So first thing here, what's wrong with his thinking? There's a significant flaw right off the bat. I normally will let it go because now and then I'll see a partner that says, "Look, I think that's a little high. I'll adjust it a bit and I'll give you that." And then they say, "Okay," and then that's it. That's pretty rare, But it's not up to me to decide what's a fair deal. It's up to me to keep people calm so they can reach a fair deal. So if partner number one agrees to this, it's none of my business. But if he doesn't and it gets contentious, that's where I need to step in. But for those of you that are thinking about selling your interest in a business, let's take a look, first of all, at what's wrong with partner number two's thinking. So the big problem is that as a founder, as an owner in a business, your investment of time is startup. That's a sunk cost. That's just like, we've got to buy some equipment to start the business. I write a check. We go out and buy the equipment. That's a sunk cost. The business doesn't owe me that money. That's money I put up to start the business. This guy's time, because he didn't have the cash, his time is his contribution. That's a cost. It's a sunk cost. You don't get it back. Now, where people have a hard time wrapping their head around it is you can work 2,200 hours at $150 an hour. That work may be worth $330,000 somewhere, but in a business that's only producing $50,000 in revenue in 18 months, we can't say that the business even is worth $330,000. We may have to make a big investment of time, plus the other guy's $90,000. We're almost $500,000 in here, and we've only produced $50,000. It doesn't mean the business is worth everything that's been put in, right? So that's a big problem with his thinking, is he wants all his time back, plus he wants what he considers half the value of the business, and he's figuring the business worth about $350,000, so he wants $175,000 for his half. That $350,000 may be a valid number. That may be okay based on $50,000 of revenue with fast growth. I could see the business getting to a $350,000 valuation, particularly if there's assets. If we own buildings, equipment, other valuable resources, then the business could be worth $350,000. But it's certainly not worth today everything that's been put in. It is definitely not a $500,000 business at this point. So this guy's looking for $475,000. If we used his number as a valuation, that puts the business value at almost $1 million. That's not proper thinking. So what's wrong with his thinking? Number one is his investment is a sunk cost. That is in, it's over. We needed that investment of his time to get the business started. So it's in, it's consumed, and we have an operating business now. It doesn't mean you can just pull it out the next day. Doesn't work like that. Two is, as an owner, you're not entitled to get back what you put in. You're entitled, if entitled is even the right word, to half the value of the business. And that's where the discussion usually goes awry, is trying to decide on a valuation. But you're not entitled to it. There's nothing in law that says if you put $100,000 in the business, you're entitled to get $100,000 back. The thing that makes businesses valuable is that they have the potential to make you a lot of money over the years and give you a big return on that investment. However, there's risk, and 80% of businesses fail in the first 5 years. You have only a 20% chance the business is even going to make it. So the idea that a year and a half in, you want everything you put in plus your valuation, that's not exactly accurate thinking. However, shouldn't be a surprise. So partner number one is angry. He says, what's wrong with this idiot? He only cares about himself. He knows the business can't afford that. He knows the business isn't worth that. Why is this guy so selfish? I don't want to be partners with this guy. He's such an idiot. He's completely unrealistic. And this guy will go off the rails. And this often happens in meetings where people will get into a very heated argument over this. And this is the point that I want to make in this short little video presentation. Partner number 2 is very upset that his offer is rejected, and he's in tears because he says I'm not appreciated. That's why I want to leave. So partner number 1 is mad because the demand is very unrealistic. It's way too high. It's just insanely crazy. And number 2 is upset that his offer is rejected, and he says, well, he doesn't appreciate me, and that's our whole problem. So they're both, all of a sudden, the first offer is on the table, and they're both upset. The point that I want to make here is, what's the big surprise? I just don't get it. I mean, obviously, the first thing you have to assume is that people are going to act in their own interest. He's not going to come to the table with an offer that hurts himself or, why don't you just keep the business, Fred, and I'll just go away so that you can succeed because I just don't want to play in the sandbox anymore. No, obviously. And how do people tend to negotiate if they're not very sophisticated? They make an outrageously high first offer knowing they're going to negotiate down, right? So what I don't understand is, why is this such a big shock? It always is. It's always a huge shock. It's always a big argument. Why is he asking so much? I just don't get it. See how selfish he is? What's wrong with this guy? And the other one says, look, he doesn't appreciate me. That's why I want to leave. Why doesn't he understand the value of my contribution? What's going on? And they get into this argument over the value of the contribution. Makes no sense. We don't want to argue about the contribution. We don't want to argue about the time that the guy worked. We don't want to argue about the value of his contribution. You get 50% of the value of the business. That's the baseline, right? That's a fair deal. The difficulty is determining the value of the business so that we can make a fair valuation of that half. However, if we get involved in arguments over, did you really spend 2,200 hours? I don't think you did. I think half the time you were, eating on the job and having sandwiches and watching TV and playing video games. I don't think you were working. What do you mean I wasn't working? And then an argument over that. Or they talk about the value of the hours. $150 an hour. If I known I was going to have to pay it, I would have just hired somebody. I could have got me somebody for $20 an hour, done the same job, blah, blah. And they end up fighting over the offer rather than negotiating and discussing the terms of the buyout. It takes the focus off the right thing, puts it on the wrong thing, and once that tension comes in, once the temperatures start to rise, it makes negotiation almost impossible. And my job is to bring that temperature down, get everybody calm, get them speaking again, and get us a counteroffer, something we can discuss. There's always a huge gap. It's over time. We want to close that gap. But if we just accuse back and forth about who made the greater contribution, who is underappreciated, who doesn't care about who, we never go anywhere. So here's what I want the takeaway to be. The big thing is, number one, don't be surprised if a partner that wants to be bought out comes with a huge demand. If they want 5 times what the business is worth, you shouldn't be surprised. People act in their own best interest. If you're the partner selling your interest and the guy that's going to keep the business wants to pay peanuts, typically what I hear is, oh, the business isn't worth anything. It's worth zero. Well, that's nonsense. We know it's not worth zero. It's probably not worth $10 million, and it's probably not worth zero. So we got to figure out between 0 and 10 million, how do we close that gap? And that's done with discussion. Let's take a look at the revenue. Let's take a look at the growth of the revenue. That 50,000, did that come in the first month and now we've been 17 months without a sale? Or did we have 6 months with nothing and then we got 1,000 and then 2 and then 8 and then 15 and then 30? Are we growing that way? What's this business look like? Did we have assets? Did we buy stuff with that $90,000? Do we own equipment? Did we invest in our office? Do we own a building? Did we do upgrades to the building? Did we buy resources like customer lists? Did we invest in marketing? Do we have 10,000 leads right now? There are things that are contributing truly to the value of the business other than the sunk costs, the 90,000 that went in, the 2,200 hours that went in. Those are sunk costs. If we put those aside and just look at things that contribute to the value of the business, we're going to be better off. Number one, don't argue and don't trigger disagreement. If your partner says, this business wouldn't exist without me, I work 2,200 hours and that's worth $10,000 an hour because I'm the smartest guy in the universe, don't argue. It's irrelevant. We want to discuss the value of the business. I don't want to trigger this guy. I don't want to upset him. I don't want to tell him he's worthless. I want to avoid that. So avoid any language that triggers disagreement. Number two, listen as much as you speak. If you speak in a meeting more than you listen, there's a problem. You're going to have a hard time getting to success. Listen at least as much as you speak. Be positive about contributions. If the guy says he worked 22 hours at $150 an hour, Bob, we wouldn't be where we are today if it wasn't for you. And I probably couldn't even hire somebody for $500 an hour to do what you've done. I appreciate it. And, we both had to make a big contribution to get this business going. And it's too bad you're leaving before we see fruit from that investment. I don't have to say, no, it's not worth that. I could have got somebody less. You're a lousy partner. We don't have to go there. We can speak positively about both partners' contributions. Don't be surprised by this. When you're in a meeting and your partner says, this is what I want for my interest and here's why, don't be shocked. It's normal. And when you counteroffer, your partner should expect you to lowball them. That's the way negotiations always work. It's too bad. It's not a very sophisticated way of negotiating. Ask for $1 million and hope you get 500,000. It's not very smart negotiating. And to say the business worth nothing and know you're going to end up paying 500,000, that's not very smart either. But the key takeaway here is, regardless of the level of sophistication, is to not be surprised that people in negotiation are looking out for themselves. The guy that's leaving, he's looking out for himself. Obviously, he wants to get as much as he can for the year and a half that he spent in the business. And the one that's staying wants to pay as little as possible to own the business. So that shouldn't surprise anybody. It shouldn't cause anybody stress or pain or anger. Just don't be surprised by it. Know that it's coming and accept it and deal with it properly by focusing on the value of the business, not history, not who said what, not whose behavior you don't like, not whose contribution is crappy. None of that. Focus on the value of the business. So if you like this tip, visit the website. I have a lot more there. And if you have problems in your business partnership, reach out, give me a call, and let's fix it. Thank you very much.